All right, we're live talking about the Texans' loss to the Tennessee Titans. Uh, Probably one of the ugliest games I've ever watched at NRG. I'm trying to think about, something that even compares. I know in 2017, once Watson got hurt, when you had the ghost of TJ Yates, you had Tom Savage, you had to watch him skip rocks. There were some ugly games, and we've seen a lot of ugly football. Let's be honest, we've probably seen more ugly football in that stadium than we have pretty football, if we're being honest with ourselves. Even sometimes when they would win, it was never the most graceful thing. But they should have just finished this game in leather helmets, in large, like high top black cleats, because this game set football back significantly. It was awful. And from the Titans' perspective, it's understandable because you have a guy starting at quarterback that has no business starting a game at quarterback at this point in his career. He's a project, and he's a guy that probably needs some time to learn a little bit. But I actually thought Malik Willis did fine. He did what he needed to do. Now, if this had been a situation where the opposing team had actually had a pulse, which the Texans didn't have, then maybe it would have been a little bit different, a little more difficult. But as far as like throwing the ball away when he needed to throw the ball away, playing within himself, I thought Malik Willis did fine for that situation. The Texans, on the other hand, offensively, that was an absolute disgrace. And I've been more fair to all parties involved than maybe anyone in town, because I do think it's very important to understand the gray area. It's very important to understand the surroundings when you're evaluating someone, whether it's Pep Hamilton, whether it's Davis Mills, whether it's Lovie Smith, whoever. I do think there's a gray area that you need to keep in mind, you need to factor in when you're evaluating these guys. There was no excuse for Davis Mills to look as bad as he looked in this game. He followed up his best performance of the year with his worst performance of the year. And you can see on the line right there, 17 of 29, 152 yards. I had to make it very clear that 92 yards in a TD came in meaningless mop-up duty in the final drive. So Davis Mills, he was awful. The entire offense was really awful. I don't know what that flea flicker was at the start of the game, but you know how sometimes you can kind of sense how something's going to go early on. As soon as they ran that busted ass flea flicker, and it was basically ended up being a tight end screen, you probably had a pretty good idea that this wasn't going to be the best offensive game. Then you had the Rex Burkhead halfback pass. I mean, that was phenomenal. Let's get a halfback pass going with Rex Burkhead. And you had Brandin Cooks looking pretty disinterested throughout the game. I'm not trying to be a body language expert, but Brandin Cooks looked like someone who didn't want to be there. I got to speak to Brandin Cooks after the game. We'll hear from Brandin Cooks. Asked him about his trade rumors. He said he didn't want to say anything, but he said a lot along the way. As far as the defense goes, I don't know what more you really expect from this front seven. This is the worst front seven in the history of the Texans. It might be it might be the worst front seven I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm not trying to have some sort of shock value or some sort of hot take. I can't remember watching a worse front seven in my entire life. Seriously. I mean, it is embarrassing. I know Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry, but I mean, Hilliard was going in there doing his thing. And by the way, how the hell did he get cut in 2020? I mean, with the way they've handled the running back situation, how the hell did Bill O'Brien cut Dontrell Hilliard? 8 carries for 83 yards. He averaged 10.4 yards per carry. He actually averaged more yards per carry than Derrick Henry, who had over 200 yards. Front seven sucks. It's not good. Davis Mills stinks. He's not good. Football team stinks. It's not good. But losing's not the worst thing in this situation. I actually think it's a good thing. Winning serves no purpose at this point. I do wonder, though, At what point do you consider just benching Davis Mills? I'm not saying it's going to solve any problems. I'm not saying it's not. It might. There's a better than 50% chance that it looks just as bad. But if you are still trying to win games, or you're saying you're trying to win games, and you might not be, but if you truly are, what would it hurt putting Kyle Allen in instead of Davis Mills? Hell, what would it hurt to put Jeff Driscoll in instead of Davis Mills? I can't believe I'm saying that, but seriously, what would it hurt at this point? Brandin Cooks was in the locker room afterwards. He didn't speak on Wednesday. I'll let you hear what Brandin Cooks had to say coming up in a few minutes. I'm going to bring on Meltzer. I'm going to bring on Stutz, and we're going to talk about this thing. But the overall theme is, look, you got to get through the next 10 games. You're going to have 2 picks, likely in the top 10 as of right now in the top 5, and not all is lost. Juan brings up Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons is the best player in the AFC South, unless it's Derrick Henry. But Jeffrey Simmons is, without a doubt, one of the 3 best players in the AFC South. It might even be closer than that. He might even be better than that. Let's bring in Mike Meltzer. Meltzer, I'm almost scared to ask you what your take is.
Landry, watching this team for 10 more games feels like a Herculean proposal right now. 10! That's not short. We have 2.5 more months of this left. 10 games. 10!
Are you going to be honest? Because I have to.
I have no incentive to lie.
No, but are you going to watch all 10 of these games?
Dude, I've watched every game since 2020. So yes, I feel like I'm contractually obligated to watch all these games. Like I live in this city. I'm here for it. 10 games.
Is there anything positive you take from this?
Is there anything positive? I'm just looking at the box score. I was analyzing that before I came on. Not really. Like how many good plays individually did they even have in this game?
I mean, do we count the Cooks on the final drive? I mean,
that was a nice play. That was a legitimately nice play in garbage time, obviously, but a nice play nonetheless. Like I'm struggling to even come up with just, I can't think of anything right now.
I mean, are we counting the sacks? I mean, I don't even. It almost seemed like even the sacks were.
Yeah, I was looking at that, but even those sacks are the product of when you have such a run-focused offense like Tennessee does. There'll be occasional plays where somebody darts into the backfield and makes a play. I know those are sacks and not TFLs, but like the way their passing game was, Malik Willis was coached to, if anything is awry, just go down. Like, do not risk the interception and just take the sack. So it's hard to even look at that. I mean, I guess I would say the one positive would be Steven Nelson had a nice interception with a good run back that they ended up settling for 3 instead of 7. That was a nice play. And he's played well this year.
Well, I mean, Malik made that pretty easy.
He did. I agree, but that was a nice play. That's the one I can think of.
How many of these guys even matter on this team? And I don't mean that in like a condescending term, but look, I'm thinking, chess here, and I'm thinking about, how many of these guys are going to be a factor? Like Derek Stingley, obviously that's important. Kenyon Green.
Well, it's all the rookies plus anybody you think on the team other than the rookie that might have a future here. Those are the only ones that matter. Right?
I guess, man.
But it's hard to even think of names who would even qualify for that second category. Like, as far as guys who could be here in the future, like that's looking increasingly unlikely on Davis Mills, O.J. Howard, Brevin Jordan, those kind of guys. By the way, how about that effort by Philip Dorsett on that second down?
Not even reaching for the
hell was that?
You must have watched Brandin Cooks earlier in the game. Cooks did something very similar.
Yeah, beyond the rookies, it's hard to find guys on the roster who have a realistic shot of being here long term, which makes it feel like just such an uphill climb from a roster standpoint. Like, it feels like they need to inject this team with, not 5 or 8 players. They need to inject them with 30 or 40 new players.
Where is it the worst? Do you think Davis Mills is worse than the front 7, or do you think the front 7 is the biggest problem? Because
I think the front 7. I think the front 7 is the biggest problem right now.
The front 7 is for sure the biggest problem, and the problem with the front 7 right now is I have my doubts about Lovie Smith. Like I have my doubts that he's able to call a defense against some of these more complex offenses where the quarterback's running, but I can't even really evaluate him right now.
Well, you would think that the line of scrimmage, with the way that they were blown off the football, like that's not a scheme thing. I know it can be over the course of a season or when you're playing better competition, but like I don't know if I can blame Lovie Smith schematically for what happened in the front 7. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do. Belichick could have coached this defense. I don't know if it would have been better. I guess the criticism might be, were they not motivated enough? Were they not energetic enough for this game? But as far as a scheme, like, I don't know how you can scheme that up. Do you just put 9 guys in the defense, in the box on every play? I guess you could do that.
But I don't think you can. I don't think you can really do that in this situation. Like, it's just not. It's impossible. And really, it probably doesn't even matter at this point. With where Lovie is, Davis Mills being benched. What do you think about the possibility of Davis Mills being benched?
Well, I was down on it earlier in the season, and I thought last week was his best performance of the season, and we talked about that a little bit. I thought he played pretty well, and then this game I thought was his worst game of the season. And the question would be, I'll put it this way. If he keeps playing like this, then even someone like me can't really argue and say, well, it's about the process. You got to give him a full second season. If it's like this, I could see where just for the sake of the team and the energy, you have to bring in Kyle Allen and just see what he provides. They're past the bye week. You figure they get their doors blown off against Philadelphia on Thursday. And so that gives you the extra time to bring in Kyle Allen, I guess, and, implement him with the reps and such. But do they want to do that so quickly? I would say if we see this a couple more times, then even I can't argue with it. Then even I can't argue with it.
No, I mean, look, if they don't want to win games, it might make sense to leave Davis Mills in there, but they're insistent that they do. And at some point, like even just an attempt at a spark seems like it could be something that, maybe they entertain. Like, what are they going to say? Oh, well, we've finally acknowledged that Davis Mills isn't our quarterback of the future. They know that. They know that he's not their long-term answer. Like, that's
most likely. I mean, I saw some people tweeting as if it's a fait accompli that they're going to draft a quarterback in April, but is that definitely a lock?
And I don't think they have to. I mean, if there's so many needs, I don't think it's a must. I mean, you could have a competition with Mills and someone else. Like, there are limitations with the personnel around him. So it's not. I know it doesn't have to be either or. Like, all this stuff is true. Like, Davis Mills can be terrible, and the personnel around him can be bad too.
Yeah, and that's why it drives me crazy when people on Twitter, especially, will go and say,
Quit talking to mystery people, Mike.
I'm gonna cite this. One of the things I hate is the argument that, like, oh, look, Trevor Lawrence is playing poorly. Oh, look, Zach Wilson was awful today, or Justin Fields was awful for the first 6 weeks of the season. And look at the skilled guys that Davis Mills has. All those things, what people need to keep in mind, like, they do not make somebody a good quarterback. Zach Wilson playing terribly against the Patriots doesn't make Davis Mills good. Trevor Lawrence not being Andrew Luck and struggling and throwing these fourth quarter picks, they do not make Davis Mills good. A shaky offensive line does not make Davis Mills good. Having Philip Dorsett on the outside in this weird amalgamation of tight ends, even though it's an excuse or rationale, that doesn't make Davis Mills good. I think you understand the point. So that's what drives me crazy. And what I like to say is we are all watching the same games. We have different opinions, interpretations, but like I thought last week, and I'm going to analyze this objectively, I thought he played pretty well, especially in the first three quarters.
He played his best game. And
yeah.
I mean, just like last week when I was judging him, I didn't really hold the pick six against him because the game was over.
I agree. The game was
done.
Over. Yes.
He'd already Patrick Mahomes wasn't going to win that game at that point. It was done. Just like this week, that was a fake ass stat padding final drive. Like
100%.
He was even worse than that. Like I look at it as he threw for under 75 yards. In this game. So it's the same thing. You got to be consistent, but he hadn't been good. He hadn't been good.
And is the Titans defense known as like some, I mean, I've been looking at, I'm going to look up their numbers, but I don't think they're known as some sort of like unbelievable. I mean, I guess they came in 9th in DVOA, so they're pretty good, but they're not considered to be like San Francisco or Buffalo or anything like that. Like no, you should be able to move the ball on them a little bit.
They're not, but Jeffrey Simmons is pretty damn good.
Yes. Yeah. He and Autry just basically killed the game.
Very, very good player. And the Texans do not have a lot of those. Shout out to John Weeks too, by the way. 200.
Yeah.
How about that? Andre Johnson.
I like the way
his jersey.
I felt like they organizationally did a nice job of just, showing some attention John's way. I think they did a good job with that. Well done.
I think the fact they suck helps. I don't think if this
was a nice touch.
If this were like a 6-0 football team and I don't think if they were in the Eagles position, who by the way come here Thursday. How about that?
Yep.
I don't think they would be doing that. Let's bring on Cody Stutes. Cody Stutes, you just you were where I was. You were at the game. Biggest thing for me in this one, first of all, I think the loss is a good thing. Second of all, I think that Davis Mills played his worst game of the season. Front seven's terrible. And other than that, I don't know that there's any like groundbreaking takeaways. Although I did. Lovie Smith went up to the podium after the game and said, we were shorthanded. Where?
Malik Collins. No Malik Collins.
Did you see the quarterback on the other team? What?
I don't know if you knew this. I don't know if you guys knew this.
The worst coach at the podium in Texans history. He's pushing David Culley with some of the stuff that he said.
Wow.
Lately. He's pushing him.
Wow.
He's not there yet, but he's pushing him to where I can't. But some of the stuff that he said, but he said we were shorthanded. By NFL standards, this has been one of the healthiest teams in the NFL. I mean, we're not talking about Aaron Donald. We're talking about Malik Collins. We were shorthanded. Give me a damn break. Stutes, what's up?
Should I just jump in with the biggest thing I got from this?
Yeah.
The shine is totally off Pep Hamilton. When Tim Kelly, with a less talented football team, over the final 4 or 5 games of the season can put together a competent offense and you can't, when the quarterbacks had all offseason to get used to your offense, when you've got a more talented football team, when you've got a franchise left tackle that's actually playing for you, first-round pick at left guard, Titus Howard at his correct spot, and a free agent guard at right guard. I know he wasn't there today, and A.J. Can, but the shine is totally off Pep Hamilton. This offense stinks. Calling that halfback pass on the quick change, when most teams take shots to the end zone, and their decision was to call a halfback pass with Rex Burkhead, that's horrendous. That's one of the worst calls I've seen in Texans history.
Whoa.
And yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
Me.
Yeah. And the shine is totally off Pep Hamilton. That offensive line sucks.
What was that flea flicker to start the game?
I actually don't mind. Teams run that play a lot.
Was that supposed to be a tight end screen, or was that? No. I mean, that was weird.
That was just an oh shit backdoor in case the play didn't go deep.
Like, in fairness to the Texans, I see that play run like every week in college or the NFL, where you try to hit the guy down the field. If it's not there, you dump it off to the tight end. Like, that happens often. It just looked ugly because everything looked ugly offensively for this team today.
They are so bitty at the end of halves too. It is like, y'all know how I feel about like bit coaching. Like that, like Greg Schiano doing that corny ass, like let's attack the
kneel down
kneel and all that. They called a timeout so that the Titans could punt, so that they could just take a knee at the end of the first half. And then at the end of the second half, they're calling timeout so that, there's not like a 10-second runoff. That was the most misleading one possession game I've ever watched.
Now, to be fair, Lovie Smith went to the podium and said they were never in the game. So he didn't go to the podium and say, oh, it was a one possession game, we were in it. He said they were never in the game. So I think that was a big positive to hear from the head coach, who needs to fire the defensive coordinator, who's the same guy.
But what is a different defensive coordinator going to do?
I mean, scheme it different. I mean,
can you scheme that different though?
I don't know. They may just not have the guys, and if they don't have the guys, then we need to have a serious conversation about, did Nick Caserio make the right decision with the 13th overall pick?
What should you taking, Jordan Davis?
You can always have that conversation.
Davis?
Yeah, 340 pounds of Jordan Davis sure would have helped over the course of this season. Don't you think?
That's fair.
It's just it's frustrating. Like I know that the film guys like Kenyon Green's run blocking, but it's like you have three pretty big investments on the offensive line, and there was one play which was the hold by Justin McCray, in which I felt like there was an actual good hold, good actual lane to run in. That's it. Like, why is it so hard to have just a couple of decently schemed runs? I feel like every good run is Dameon Pierce doing something on his own. Just give me like 3 good runs per game.
Yeah, how come he has to? How come everything he gets has to be yards after contact? Can he just get a free lane to run at something?
Like, do they need to draft? Do they need to invest 5 first-round picks into offensive linemen? It just seems ridiculous.
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me with that crap.
It's frustrating, that part of it.
Don't need Stoots. Where does the Rex Burkhead halfback pass line up with the Wildcat?
The Wildcats not even an argument. The Wildcat's way worse, but I mean it's in the top 10. It's in the top 10 for me of most inexplicable, least talented, least likely to succeed plays in the history of this franchise. It's terrible.
And that's where the Boo Birds came out. Like the Boo Birds, as soon as you ran that Rex Burkhead halfback pass, the Boo Birds were in full effect.
It's just Pep Hamilton. Look, I understand he's not working with a loaded complement on offense. I get that, but it shouldn't look as difficult as it looks. Like there are teams that are bad. There are teams that are as poorly talented as them that can find ways to get the ball to open players. Nobody's ever open when they throw the ball.
Not even Brandin Cooks.
Not even Brandin Cooks. They never have easy run lanes, like Mike said. The offensive line is never consistent. It's every single year. And for the longest time, it was like, well, Bill's just committed to the offense. Bill's just committed to the offense. Like, yeah, okay. Well, last year, Tim Kelly was at least throwing the ball deep with Davis Mills. They won't throw the ball deep. And, yeah, okay, maybe Davis gets happy feet and doesn't want to throw the football deep or is afraid to make a mistake. Well, even when he does, it's guys aren't open. Nobody's open. I don't know
if you guys remember the play because you were at the game. There was that screen they tried to set up to Ogunbowale that the TV broadcast showed a couple times where it looked like he was open and Davis Mills just kind of glanced, opted not to throw, and then kind of like ran on the right. And Ogunbowale was standing there like basically with his arms up in the air. And Archuleta on the broadcast was like, yeah, he should have pulled the trigger on that. Like that play was there.
There were a few plays like that. Like if you would have seen the flea flicker, Mike, like if you would have seen like the way that it was developing and stuff, like it was a very weird flea flicker. Like just the whole way in which they ran that play. There was that play that you just mentioned, the screen, and then the Davis Mills interception. They looked like a peewee team that was just learning how to run pick plays because Jordan Akins literally ran into Brevin Jordan and knocked him off of his route.
Yep.
And then Mills threw the interception. Like all these plays that, and I don't want to sit. I've never, implemented an offense, but all of these plays that seem relatively simple when other teams are running them, they make them look really weird. Almost like they're like practicing them for the first time. That pick play and then the interception was weird. And you have the screens, all that. Like it's
in your
just
scripted,
a really weird offense.
The pick plays in your scripted set of plays. Like that's something that they would have practiced and felt good about over the course of the entire week. Like, that's something that you script out for the first 15, 20 plays, and they ran that play, and that's what happens?
And I mean,
that's poor coaching.
It can be coaching, or it can be, look, you're running, third down plays with Jordan Akins and Brevin Jordan. So it can be just as much about personnel too.
Yeah, look, that Nick Caserio's done a very poor job with this roster. It's look, he had a tremendous amount of holes to fill, and he can't fill them all. I mean, but it's just some of the guys he brought back that are key contributors on this
Kirksey
team.
Is awful, by the way.
It's so bad.
He's one of the worst linebackers that I've watched. Because I got in like hate watching mode where I was just watching Christian Kirksey the whole time, and that's typically how I get through ass whoopings. I call it the Reed Boyd goggles, because back when Texas in the early 2000s would lose, I would just always watch number 45 Reed Boyd, and he would just justify my anger. So I'd watch him the whole time. I was like that with Ross Blacklock in preseason. Man, watching Christian Kirksey, good Lord. Goodness gracious. It is bad. And every time he makes a play, he's got a flex downfield. He's got that Kevin Johnson syndrome. This is one of the culture guys that they insist is like one of their dudes, and they put him in front of the media and he says stuff. That's getting a little bit old. I think that's one of Lovie's guys. That's what someone told me. But man, Christian Kirksey is a rough watch. That tape, the tape that he's going to have to watch this week, you might as well just ignore it, because that's going to be a really awkward film session for him.
Linebacker play has been awful, and at least Christian Harris has the excuse of being a rookie, but I haven't seen a whole lot of him at 2 games in, and I'm not like pressing any alarms, but I know that
it's not going to matter like when it gets to
he has a lot of time, but the linebacker play has been terrible.
They brought these guys back.
Yes,
like you watched these guys for a year and you brought these guys back.
Justin Britt, when is his retirement going to be official? What's the deal with that?
Stay going. Scott Questenberry's better than he is. It looked worse today if Britt was on the field.
I agree. It's just it is the annoyance, and it's a good point that they had the full year to evaluate these guys, and they brought them back. That is the issue. I understand that Nick Caserio may have had a good draft, and that's important. I get that, but as far as creating value in other places around the roster the last year and a half, it simply has not been there.
Has he had a win on any already in the NFL player that's on this roster besides Steven Nelson?
Maybe Desmond King?
Well, Desmond King's a former Pro Bowler.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that
man.
But they brought him in. He's played pretty well in the slot, I think.
It's so good that he splits time with Tavierre Thomas.
Yeah, and I guess he'll come back. But that's a great question. How many wins has
Nick Caserio?
Yeah.
He seems to have an issue. Scouting players who've already been in the National Football League.
Now, is it because of where they are in the process would be my question. Like, is this going to change? Like, if they were good, like, let's say the Texans were good, is Christian Kirksey back and Kamu Grugier-Hill? Because if so, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a real problem. If you watch, maybe there's like some different type of mindset with this, quote, process over results thing. But if you're telling me that if the Texans were, let's say, a team that was competing for a wild card or something, and you would really go through an offseason where you watch Justin Britt play for a year, Christian Kirksey and Kamu Grugier-Hill, and decided you wanted to hashtag run it back, and we'd throw Farrell Brown in there too, and you decided you wanted to hashtag run it back, that's a problem. Like, that's almost to me worse. Again, unless there's just some different mindset and some different meaning, but that's worse than just like a random signing that doesn't go well. If you have mediocre guys in your building for a year and then you bring them back, because you could find guys like that on the street.
Yep.
Like you can easily find a Christian Kirksey right now. You cut Christian Kirksey. One of us could do that. Maybe he's not going to be able to gather the team and, give them a speech before
but that ain't working.
Talk about culture or whatever. Like, he can't do that. But as far as someone playing football at that level, you could find a Christian Kirksey tonight. Matter of fact, it might not even take it could take you 20 minutes to find a guy that can play football as good as Christian Kirksey right now.
I just look at this roster, certainly the guys from last year to this year that they brought back that have not been any good, but also just those guys getting here in the first place. Christian Kirksey didn't play well enough to solicit the contract that he was given to come back to this team. Malik Collins has been fine, sure, but did he deserve that big contract? I don't believe so. The fifth rounder for Anthony Miller, screwing up the salary cap with the Shaq Lawson thing.
God, Mike hates that.
That was ridiculous. At least they got some value for it, but that was ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Did I mention the fifth for Anthony Miller yet? The fifth for Anthony Miller. He traded a random sixth for a guy that didn't even finish.
What about Marcus Cannon?
Quarterback?
What about swapping like every round for Marcus Cannon?
Who was the cornerback that they traded like a fifth for, and then he ended up being a good corner for the rest of the season after they cut him like after a week?
That I don't remember. But Cody brought up a good point. They traded last year for that quarterback who didn't, Ryan Finley. That right? They traded for Ryan Finley, didn't make it.
Yeah, he was on the team for like 46 days.
Yeah, it's just not valuing some of these late rounds makes no sense. Like I was watching Jets Patriots today before the Texans, and every time I saw Marcus Cannon, I kept thinking about that stupid trade.
What was it? Like 3 swaps, right?
I was looking it up. I think that's what I thought it was initially, and I think they kind of changed the term, so it's a little nuanced. But the point is, like, any draft value they gave up for Marcus Cannon was ridiculous because he was never going to be a long-term solution, and it took one of your younger players who could be here for a while and put him at a spot that he's not good at, and it just didn't make any sense. I thought, if I'm going to give Nick the benefit of the doubt, I thought Kamu Grugier-Hill, just looking at 2021, I thought had a nice season.
No, he did.
Just looking at last year.
He did.
Yeah, and so they went and drafted a guy that was the same size as him, that was faster than him, and stuck Kirko back out there with him and still couldn't stop the run. Yeah, I get he had a lot of tackles. He had a lot of tackles after 8-yard gains.
I thought though he had a bunch of TFLs last year. This is not like, I think Grugier-Hill drives me crazy too, but I just thought his play was pretty solid in 2021. Like I thought he made a bunch of splash plays.
This isn't like completely their fault because I find it hard to believe that they would have brought this guy in on that contract. But I was talking to Sean, and these are like the Mike Meltzer type of conversations. I honestly, like, I wish they would do like an ESPN short. I'm not going to say a 30 for 30, but I want like a 10-minute ESPN short in which Bill O'Brien, Jack Easterby, and whoever was in the scouting department just breaks down the process that led to Eric Murray getting the contract he did 3 years ago. Like, did y'all watch tape? Like, was there like a film session? Was there like a discussion? Like, how did that happen? And why is he still on the team? Like, at some point, like if I had $2 million or whatever it was going to cost, I'll pay you $2 million to make me not have to look at Eric Murray play football anymore. But like, what was the process for that? Did they just crunch the tape and decide that Eric Murray was going to be worth that? Because that's a disaster too.
Wasn't he basically a random player for the Browns? Like even Browns fans, Browns fans were like, what the heck were we missing that this guy got an actual legitimate contract? I mean, I guess the only thing that explains it is I'm looking at their cap table, and it would have cost them more money to cut him versus keep him by about 1.1 million. It's the only.
Hold on, does that account the fact that they altered the contract this preseason?
I'm just looking at 2022. That's the part I'm not sure about because I know they reworked it. So I don't know the answer to your question, Cody, which is a good one. But I as I recall, they were underwater on that contract for longer than I would have. I mean, I wouldn't have signed to the contract, period, obviously.
Seth just put out, Seth Payne just gave me a stat because I said something in Ted Johnson. Shout out to Teddy J. I said this is the worst offensive performance I've ever watched in my entire life today. From top to bottom, both teams, this is the worst. Ted said you must not have watched the 2013 team. I did watch the 2013 team, and I said that's the greatest show on turf compared to this. So Seth Payne came with stats. Are you ready for these statistics? If you want to compare the 2013 squad and this Texans offense, I'll put them up there. I'll put them up on the screen right now.
Well, here's what I know. 2013 was in some games.
Yeah, they were in almost every game.
16.6 points per game. 2013, 17.3. 2022, 288.7 yards per game. 2013, 347.
Yeah, 2013 was weird because it was more about like the close losses, shop throwing pick sixes for a month straight, whatever that was. It wasn't utter ineptitude like we saw for 3.95 quarters today.
The 2013 team started with back-to-back 30-point performances.
Yep.
It'd be a goddamn miracle if this team scored 30.
I've seen worse offensive performances in my time just watching football, but this was up there. I mean,
Look, Seth will tell you there's been some days where the offense has played pretty
35
bad.
yards at half, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Listen,
I watched.
Seth was a part of one of the expansion year where they beat the Steelers and they had 10 passing yards. Seth was on that team. That's like one of the greatest defensive performances in the history of the team. They won. It's the expansion year. They had some performances where they couldn't throw the football. Like they had like 40, 50 yards passing for the game.
Oh, I kind of feel like I just watched that.
Well, yeah, I mean, those guys would run these guys off the field.
Brandin Cooks, he skipped his media availability on Wednesday because he needed to lift. Your thoughts on that, Mike?
I mean, if I was angrier, I have a very hard time taking him and Kamu Grugier-Hill seriously. Like you build these guys up like they're culture guys. Jack Easterby gets fired, and I feel like I just don't respect the way that Kamu Grugier-Hill asked for his release, and I don't really respect the way that Brandin Cooks is going about it either. Like, you have that ridiculous press conference, whatever it was, 2 years ago, where he didn't want to be traded. He's in here for the long haul, and now
I asked him about that.
You did, which was a good job by you. And it's
I have the audio if y'all want to hear Brandin Cooks. He didn't say a lot. It was basically a lot of repeating himself, but this was the portion of the media scrum that I got with Brandin Cooks.
Everybody got to go through it. There's no excuse. Got to find be able to way to operate and get better.
How frustrating is it, for the offense to struggle the way they have throughout the majority of the season?
Frustrating.
Where do you go from here? Like,
okay.
what can y'all do to try to improve things?
Get back to work.
If they trade you, how would that be?
I'm not, like I said, I'm worried about it's internal, so I'm not worried about that on if, what's, ends. Is what it is.
In the past, you said you didn't want to be traded. So has that changed?
Like I said, I'm not really talking about that right now. So,
all right, thanks, guys. Thanks, Brandon.
All right, there we go. And I think Stutes came up and said, what'd he say? Yeah, I mean, he basically just said he wants to be traded because in the past you said you didn't, and that wasn't internal. And now you're saying this, so he made it clear he wants to be traded.
Don't put words in his mouth. He said he will not accept a trade, which was very strange from someone who did not have a no trade clause.
Yes.
I will not accept the trade is what he said. But I guess he'll be accepted at one now.
How good is Brandin Cooks at this point? Because
I'm trying to figure that out too, because he doesn't look as explosive, but the offense has been so bad, and Mills has been poor as well, to where it's hard for me to judge because I listen. I understand it's in garbage time, all that, but I was thinking at the end, like, okay, if you had a better offense, a more vibrant offense, and the quarterback was able to go deep and give him some chances, would he be putting up better production like somewhere else? I feel like the answer probably is yes. Is it where it was?
So.
You would hope so. Is it to where it was last year or the year before? That I have some doubts about.
The other thing is, man, like at some point, like how many players, and look, I understand that it happens. How many players in sports have been traded 4 times by the time before they're 30?
It's incredibly unique.
I mean, it's got to be a small list. Like, how about some NBA players that get thrown in on trades?
But how about in football?
Often, but
how about any football player? Any?
How many football players get traded twice these days?
Like how many that would be interesting to look at. Like how many NFL players have even been traded 4 times? I don't know if any have been. I would have to really think about that, but 4, that's a lot. Now to be fair for Cooks, like he's been very productive at each stop.
And I don't know what making him. The other thing is like he's making him look really stupid. Like, I'm a process guy. I'm a Caserio is the scenario guy. I'm a look. Just let this play out. Let's see how the draft picks go. Try to fix something each time. But Brandin Cooks is making them look really stupid. And this isn't something that you can just say, this was all Bill O'Brien. Like, nope. I know that Cooks was traded for before Caserio and he was here, but he was one of your culture guys. He was one of the guys that you touted. Y'all gave him a contract. I don't think Easterby I don't think Easterby was just, allowed to just give him a contract, at least at that point. And now all of a sudden he's making Brandin Cooks is making them look pretty dumb right now.
Cody asked the question earlier about how many wins Caserio has. This is a loss. They gave him $36 million fully guaranteed at signing. You may as well light that money on fire. Maybe they can get some value for it, so we shall see. But that $18 million guaranteed next year makes him extremely difficult to trade. Like, to me, they're going to have to eat a significant portion of that.
They're going to have to eat a nice chunk.
Yeah, they're going to have to eat a big chunk of that just to get close to what they want. They're going to have to do that, which I feel like probably impacts their cap for next season, which is when you want to start spending money and making this team actually better, which is frustrating.
And the other thing is, what happens when, let's say he doesn't get traded, then what?
That's a great question. I guess he just mopes around for the next 10 games. 10.
The difference between Brandin Cooks and Laramie Tunsil is Laramie Tunsil can just not give a damn and just come in and do his job and be a very productive player. Brandin Cooks was sold. There's this over-romanticism of Brandin Cooks, and I don't know how you go. You can change roles. You can take a guy who might have been a manager and you can move him to the sales staff. Or you can take a host and you can move him to being a producer and he can figure stuff out. But how does a guy go from I'm the culture guy, I'm the veteran, I'm the guy you guys want to follow, I'm the process guy, to showing up at work and just trying to do your job and kind of moping around and doing something different? I'm not. I think locker room dynamics are overrated. And I think there's a lot of generalities that specifically former players use and sometimes fans use them. But that's got to be weird in the locker room if all of a sudden that guy goes from rah, 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 rah to I'm just here to do my job guy.
And what changed for Brandin Cooks? Did something he signed this contract in April.
He signed it after they won 4 games twice. So it's not like losing is just there are some guys who, once you start losing, they get frustrated. They were losing.
Zach Cunningham.
Honestly, maybe Brandin Cooks is just kind of a fraud. I don't want to say fraud. Maybe Brandin Cooks was just putting on a good face until he got his new contract, and then his whole tone was going to change. Maybe the whole culture stuff, I don't want to get traded, I'm all the way in on this. Maybe that had as much to do with I'm just going to get my new contract and then I'm going to walk around and bitch.
I mean,
maybe that's what it was.
All he's known in Houston is losing. 2020, last year, and then he signs that deal. So maybe, but I don't know if he is a fraud, but his behavior on this has been fraudulent.
They save $10 million on the cap next year and write him a $16 million dead cap. So
they'll save 10 by doing that.
They'll save 10 on next year's cap if they trade Brandin Cooks.
Well, based on that, to me, I almost feel like you have to do it in the next 2 days.
Yeah, and you are in position to where, it sucks to have dead money, but you are in at least a position where you have some cap relief coming next year, and you're going to have a lot of young guys on rookie deals. So it might be the time. It just is. I can't take anyone serious whose entire happiness is based on Jack Easterby being in a football organization. I can't take you serious. That's weird to me. That's just, it's not even like having a relationship with the guy, but I mean, you've seen what Deshaun Watson has said. You've seen what Andre Johnson has said. there's all kinds of players that have said there's former employees. It's very well documented. Even, your old boss, Bill Belichick, said that it didn't make sense for Jack to be doing personnel and all that type of stuff. Like, if you want to say you had a good relationship with him or whatever, that's fine. But if your whole happiness with an organization is based on Jack Easterby being there, I question a lot about you. Like, I question, your place in this whole process. And I also question whether you really do care about winning or anything like that. It seems it's really strange if that is the case. And it seemed to be the case for Kamu Grugier-Hill, although playing time did come into play. But I mean, Mike, you asked what changed. It's pretty clear what changed with Brandin Cooks.
Yeah, based on the timing. Jack gets fired. Kamu asks for his release. Cooks' whole demeanor changes. I mean, and this kind of stuff, like, this is not, I don't think, that common around the NFL, to where Cooks misses the press conference. Lovie sidesteps around it. He's a full participant in practice, and he's randomly questionable for the game. That is not common across the NFL with other players. I just have a hard time taking it seriously with this whole culture thing that they've talked about.
I don't know if this is something, but to me, it's not nothing. Brandin Cooks, for most of the season, all season, in the weekly media availability, has been listed as going the same day as Davis Mills. On the most recent media availability release for this upcoming week, it is only listed as Davis Mills going that day.
So Brandin Cooks is not listed on the media availability. Is he listed at all?
He is not listed at all. It is now, that could be the product of the short week, but I have a hard time thinking that if the player is noted and notable to be on the release every single week, and now he's not on the release, that seems like quite the difference.
So they're still talking Wednesday, right?
No, Wednesday they don't do anything. No availability. It's going to be
Tuesday. The game.
It'll be Tuesday for Davis Mills.
I'm so excited to see these guys against Philadelphia.
Why is that?
Just what it's going to look like.
What do you think the line's going to be? I said 10.5. Adam Spillane said you're crazy.
I've looked at it.
It was 9 on the look ahead. I don't know what it's been. I don't know what it'll be next week.
It's going to be up. I'm going to look at this right now because I got an email about this. It's
13.
It's 13. Yeah.
Okay, so 13.
I mean, so and I know the NFL's very weird with this.
Cover.
Who is going what kind of person is going to be confident in Vegas or the numerous states that allow sports gambling? Like, what kind of person is going to be confident in taking yeah, I'm going to take the points. I'm going to grab the points here, guys.
I feel like Stoots would make that bet.
Really?
I feel like Stoots would make that bet. Am I
I don't think so.
What? Jalen Hurts coming off 4 touchdowns? Hell no.
Dude, it's a short week.
Big picture question. Does
a lot of pressure coming home?
You guys were in the building, and Cody, you were at the World Series yesterday. I don't know if Landry, you got the stark contrast and just what this is going to look like moving forward here. Like, what is the Cleveland game going to look like? Yeah, like what if the Browns?
That will be rowdy, but I think there'll be a lot of orange.
Yeah, I would anticipate you'll see a few more Texans fans than what you saw today, but you also see a lot of Cleveland fans.
I would think so. It just, what if they do that to the Texans, except they have Deshaun Watson at quarterback instead of Malik Willis? Like,
they won't. If they have Deshaun Watson, then
I guess they're not going to run it for 300. That'll be unlikely. Although with Chubb, you never know.
A little bit better than Malik Willis.
It might not take Chubb that much effort to replicate it.
Exactly.
So what needs to change, if anything, right now? Are there any realistic changes?
I think they need to stop focusing on culture and start getting the best talent in that is humanly possible. And I think the big offseason decision is, and what's hard about it is timing and what draft pick they end up with. But the obvious big question would be, if they're seriously thinking about drafting a quarterback in the first round with one of those 2 picks, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to have a defensive-minded, much older coach to be the head coach for him.
Yeah, and I do wonder that, because right now you got process over results. If you have 2 top 5 picks next year, like in a perfect world, you're getting someone that's going to significantly impact your offense and probably someone that's going to significantly impact your defense. And that's the hope. And you're going to be able to build a more complete roster. Is there anything that Lovie Smith needs to do to save his job? Or, is there any scenario in which Lovie Smith is one and done? And I'm not worried about optics. Like, Nick Caserio doesn't need to worry about like some sort of optics or what, at Needle Dick 555 on Twitter is going to say if they get rid of Lovie Smith. But like at some point, like,
hey, look at the
there's
defense.
gotta be something that he's bringing to the table.
They have a team that is deeper and more talented, and they are worse. And they are worse specifically in the area that Lovie Smith coaches. So if you want to make a change, it's very easy to point to the football reasons why you would make a change.
How bad does it look, even with my question, that they would basically have, O'Brien fired, Culley fired, Lovie fired? Like, how do you explain that away
San
as an
Francisco
organization?
fired 3 coaches in that same amount of time.
That's did.
All I would say. They got rid of Harbaugh. They got rid of Jim Tomsula, a.k.a. David Culley. They got rid of Chip Kelly, a.k.a. Lovie Smith. So that would be my answer there, is that it's been done before they found their Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I think that's a valid answer. I mean, another thing I wonder about, even though I know that there's a bunch of faith in Nick Caserio, if you look across the NFL, I would have the open question of how many of these organizations are driven by the general manager versus the head coach, the way that this one seems to be, except that they don't really let him hire as coaches. But
how many organizations were this much of a bleep show for as long as they were in pretty much every area, from the PR to the roster management to
the Jaguars? That's it, basically.
Yeah. So, I mean,
the tough part is they don't have anybody who's the face of the franchise. They don't have a face of the franchise.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
it was going to be Lovie Smith, but then the team stinks, so it can't be the head coach. So all the offseason stuff's great. My letter to Houston, sure, cool, whatever. The results don't dictate that. Look at Tennessee. John Robinson shows up. They haven't won less than 9 games since he took over as the general manager.
Yep.
They had to bail on the number 2 overall selection at quarterback that they traded up for. They
did fire a coach after making the playoffs, though, and winning a playoff game.
That's great. They moved on from that guy. Who'd they hire? Vrabel, who constantly overachieves. Like the general manager there did a great job in a very crappy spot, and then found a crappy situation, turned it into a crappy situation at quarterback, and then pivoted off of that. Like, I get that they were in a better starting spot than the Texans, but it's hard not to say that they haven't gone backwards, especially if they got to fire a coach at the end of the year.
I think he makes it. Although, I
would trade this.
Hamilton going to be back?
At this rate, no. At this rate, no.
You can't let him coach the team next year.
Yeah, if this continues, whether it's Lovie, whether it's somebody else, then yeah, they're gonna have a new offensive coordinator. They got to turn things around for Pep to even have an argument to come back.
I want to grade him on a curve, but
you can fine grade him on a curve.
I think
just because you grade on a curve doesn't mean you're getting an A.
No, I think today was Pep's worst performance.
In my freshman year at Tech, I got graded on a curve in economics class. I ended up with a C. So
sounds about right.
There you go. Yep. Economics is hard in college.
Sounds about right.
Especially when you don't go to class.
Not easy.
No, small observation. The chairs in the Texans meeting room are too comfortable. They got to take the comfortable chairs out and put tougher chairs in so guys pay attention.
Should they also get rid of the pool table in the locker room?
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
Here's a question I have. Would you trade the Texans situation for every single other team in the league? I'm talking all in, like roster, cap, everything.
No, I like the 4 first-round picks. And I like a lot of these young guys.
Wow.
That's what keeps me sane. I like the situation moving forward. It's going to be hell this year, but even next year, I think you could see a significant improvement.
Okay.
There's some light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to competence, assuming that you draft well.
I understand that this is going to sound stupid in 2022, perhaps 2023, but over the next 5 years, I'd rather be the Texans than either the Broncos or the Colts.
The Broncos were actually the one team I thought about as maybe not trading because of the deep commitment they have to Russell Wilson. Indianapolis, I'm not as sure of because I like some pieces of the roster.
I'm just $500 million offensive lines doing wonders for them.
Well, I just don't know like what their path is to get a quarterback because they already have 3 wins, which I know isn't a lot, but that's already middle of the pack in this lousy NFL where basically nobody's good minus 3 teams.
Maybe they should have spent $80 million on a quarterback instead of an offensive guard.
Maybe. I just don't know who that would have been, but I understand.
Yeah, and they didn't have the full draft equity to be able to get in on the Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson trades.
Yeah, they tried to get Deshaun. They tried.
You
the
got at
Colts
least 3 firsts for that.
The Colts and Tom Brady should swallow their pride and team up this offseason.
Landry?
Stop.
The Colts and Tom Brady should both swallow their pride and team up this offseason.
Meltz, I understand you got to bounce, man. I'll holler at you.
I do. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right, there you go. That's
now you're left with me and wild hypotheticals.
Yeah, wild ass hypotheticals that make no sense. That was a tough one, man. You know how I am, where there's no such thing as like a bad football game. That was a tough one. Mm-hmm. That was the most difficult game that I've had to watch.
You thankfully, because you don't expose yourself to this, you do not watch a lot of Service Academy football. You watch some, but you don't catch Navy or Army highlights on a weekly basis.
No.
There was a stretch
game this year, though.
Army Navy's fantastic. Everybody should go once. There was a stretch there where it felt like a team that had never played Army or Navy before, where it was run, 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 run. You know they're running, run, and you just couldn't stop it. But at least there's window dressing when Army and Navy do it. They were just single back, boom, through the line. Single back, boom, through the line.
And there's nothing they can do about it.
They don't have the bodies. They have 3 really light defensive tackles who aren't super athletic. The one guy that has any juice to the defensive tackle room was hurt today, and Malik Collins. Their linebackers are slow and not big, and they're at such a talent deficit that they fixed the quarterback spot this offseason, but nobody has to throw against them.
The problem for me is I'm not confident that it's not going to be as bad, but I'm not confident that Lovie Smith's going to be able to maximize what he has on defense.
I made this point to you in the preseason, and it's a worthwhile point for the total evaluation of the team over the course of the season. There is not a lot of coaches on this coaching staff that have been associated with winners in the past. A lot of their key coaches have been associated with losing or have been associated with teams that were not good. And you have not seen tremendous development with hardly anybody over the course of this season so far. If that is the case at the end of the year, you need to take a long, hard look at the entire coaching staff. Lovie Smith knows George Warhop. Jaguars fans despised their offensive line and the way it played. And he's the offensive line coach here. Now, the O-line's been okay until this week. It was atrocious. A.J. Cann apparently is the most important piece on the team because they couldn't block anybody at right guard today. But just go up and down the roster and look at where a lot of these guys have coached. They haven't coached for winning situations. It's worth having somebody in the building that knows what winning looks like. It's not the general manager.
The offensive line coach, I avoided the storyline this year. I don't give a shit anymore who the offensive line coach is. I'm okay. Whatever. Just block better. I'm not going to, dive into what George Warhop and James Campen. Remember when James Campen basically got a parade because he was coming here?
Well, he got a parade because he wasn't
Mike
Devlin.
Is he still volunteering at Rice?
I don't know.
Did you see John Perry, the old BOB clone, receiver coach? He got demoted at at Sam Houston already.
What was he doing for Sam Houston?
He was the OC.
Wow. No wonder they
Yeah,
only
didn't
scored like.
They didn't score a touchdown the first 2 weeks of the year. They let John Perry call their offense, and then he ended up getting fired or demoted. How do you go through an evaluation and make John Perry that guy? I feel like we always get on BOB tangents whenever we start talking about this stuff. But seriously,
Oh, Mike Devlin.
John Perry talk. The guy was a dope.
Mike Devlin is the assistant offensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens,
Okay.
who have had a disappointing offensive line this year.
But he's the assistant. What's he doing? Holding bags? Are you worried about Dameon Pierce getting too much run?
That's
We've gone
running
from
backs.
giving the ball a lot to now I'm like at 15 carries. I was glad he had 15 carries today, but now all of a sudden it's like, man, we gotta ease the workload for old 31.
Let's be very honest with ourselves and where the running back position is. Unless you have a generational guy, they're here for 3-4 years. They're good for 3-4 years, and then you move on.
You need to make him 1B. Like they need to get like another stud with Dameon Pierce. I think that's their next step. Their next step is like get a lot of running backs that can do a lot of different things.
How about
easy fix?
How about Tony Pollard in free agency?
Nah. There's
how about Josh Jacobs in free agency?
How about Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, or A-Chain or something like that in the second?
It's hard for me to foresee using a second round pick on that when you have so many other holes.
Dude, that fixes a lot though.
Does it?
Yes.
Does it?
A running back who can catch the ball, move around and all that? Yes, absolutely. With Pierce, 1-2 punch? Yes, it fixes a hell of a lot.
Does it really fix that much? Does it help the defensive line?
No, I mean, but we're talking about a second round pick. You would already have 2 firsts.
Yeah, one of them's going to be a quarterback.
Man,
they got to draft Bryce Young, and they got to draft the defensive tackle from Georgia.
Carter?
Yeah.
The problem though that I have is that I don't like I don't like Will Levis and I don't like CJ Stroud. So
cool, get Bryce Young then.
It's Bryce or bust at this point, and I fear that if they don't have the first pick, they're not going to get Bryce. I want draft and then trade. I want to trade and get more picks for a team desperate with the quarterback. Like if Cleveland sucks in their top 5 and someone's going to trade up for Levis, you can get another first and trade back to where they're at.
I'm down.
In the first round, do it.
I'm down. I'm down for that.
But I'm Bryce or bust at this point when it comes to quarterbacks.
I don't like Stroud that much, and I definitely don't like Will Levis.
Yeah, you dislike Will Levis too much, though.
He's Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz was good.
But not that 1 year where he was good in Philadelphia, Carson
MVP
Wentz.
Probably would have been.
Not that 1 year where he was in Philadelphia and good, Carson Wentz. He's like the 3 times a game where you go, what the fuck are you doing, Carson Wentz? He's that Carson Wentz.
Yeah,
Where it looks like a game of Madden glitched Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine not taking a quarterback if it's not going to be Bryce.
I'm with you on that. Take 2 defensive linemen then. I don't care.
Carter and Anderson?
Sign me up. Let's go. It's two absolute dogs.
Carter, Anderson, and then a trade up because they have all that ammunition. They trade up and get Bijan Robinson. And they have Carter, Anderson, Bijan Robinson. And then a quarterback competition between Jimmy Garoppolo and Davis Mills for a year before they draft the quarterback the next year with the 2 1s.
A quarterback competition between Davis Mills and Jimmy Garoppolo? You think Jimmy's not walking into
pillow fight?
Jimmy's not walking into a competition. Jimmy's walking into a big fat salary where he's the guaranteed starter.
Salary?
He's walking into big money. If Mitchell Trubisky and some of these other Scribinis can get the job from day one.
You're talking like a 1 year 10 or something?
Garoppolo will get 3 years and at least $15 million a year.
Okay. Mark that.
Mark it. That's fine. He'll be the starting quarterback for somebody next year, and he'll be making money where there's no question he's the starting quarterback. He's not walking into a quarterback competition.
Someone says, please tell Clint and Sean the fans do not care how enjoyable their and the players' weeks are after the Texans win. The Texans need to tank and forget about winning, which would hurt the team's draft. I don't even – what does that mean?
That's a person that just wants the top pick no matter what.
Okay. Yeah. I'm down with that. Anything else to add? Hellacious game. I need to shower. I feel smelly after watching that stink.
It's a bad football team, and they're going to be bad for the rest of the year.
Brandin Cooks going to be a part of it? You think he gets moved?
I believe Cooks will still be on this team. I don't believe they'll find the appropriate value for they're going to feel like that it's worth it.
How humbling is that going to be for him? No one even wants his ass.
They can spin it as you're too valuable to us and try to make him feel better, but he'll know the truth.
Man, they don't need to coddle Brandin Cooks. Like, this isn't like we're not talking about, a Hall of Fame caliber player, but that's where we're at. I think he gets traded. I think he gets moved.
What's the deal?
I think it's probably gonna be like a third, and they're probably gonna have to eat a lot of salary. I think it might be like a third and fifth.
I think they get a fourth and a sixth.
Yeah, it's gonna be something like that, and they're gonna have to eat some of the money. And Texans cap's gonna be really mad about it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he's gonna be mad about the salary stuff, but yeah, they're gonna have to eat some of that. It's not gonna look great. And then they have the worst. They already have the worst front seven in franchise history. Then they'll have the worst receiving core by far in franchise history too. They might already, even with Cooks. When has it been worse?
Yeah, you're probably right.
Expansion?
The very first year was not great.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
But they quickly got Andre Johnson and things were different.
Yeah, that helped.
I'd love to know. Look, I get that Jackie Sweet's not there anymore. I'd love to know what Andre thinks about the situation.
Which one?
The roster. Like, does he think these guys are ballers, or does he think these guys are just who they are?
No.
Do you dress up for Halloween anymore, Landry?
I don't.
I didn't think so.
I don't. Speaking of dress up, I asked John Weeks after the game which was cooler. Was it cooler to see Andre Johnson rocking your jersey, or was it cooler to see Cal McNair rocking your jersey? He said I put him too much pressure on him to answer that question. I don't think that. I mean, I would say Andre, man. Andre ain't wearing people's jerseys,
right?
Yeah, Andre rocking your jersey. That's way cooler than Cal.
Although
they're both pretty badass.
I would think that there's a list of like 5 or 7 guys where Cal would wear their jersey. It feels like that list is shorter for Andre.
I didn't even think there was a list of 1 with Andre.
Andre Johnson walking around wearing a John Weeks jersey is pretty baller.
That's sick.
It's pretty baller.
That'd be my profile pic if I were John Weeks. Seriously, and it would never change. I might even do that weird ass announce the profile pic that people do. What's
change my profile pic.
Profile pic and announcing it and tweeting it out. New profile pic.
I don't know. There's about to be a lot of changes on the Twitter.
Oh yeah,
a lot of changes. About to have to start paying to get a blue check mark and this and that.
Oh, you have to pay to have the blue check mark?
That's the rumor. Elon's going to make folks pay $20 a month for blue check marks.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to pay?
No, but I hope Schefter does so I don't get duped. Like Schefter and Rappaport, I need them to pay for it.
How are you going to pay $20?
I'm not going to pay $20. I can take my check mark.
Man, I got to think about this.
I don't know that there's anything they could offer me that I would pay $20 for.
Well, I do think that it's
Netflix isn't even $20 a month.
Yeah, but I do think it's smart because it's more so to eliminate like just random
riff-raff.
political people that are editors for like whatever, just saying all this stuff. Cause it does hit a little bit different.
Yeah. If all of a sudden it's a, it does add some cachet to the check mark. The check mark used to have a lot more cachet.
It does. Yeah. It's been cheapened. Maybe us getting it is part of it. So who the hell are we to say anything?
Whoa. Don't come for my check mark. I didn't come for your check mark.
Well, you're already giving yours up, cheap ass.
Oh, yeah, because you're going to spend $20 a month on it?
Probably.
Shoot, you illegally stream every boxing and MMA fight in the world. You
No,
spend
I
$20
don't.
on Twitter.
No, I don't. I
I
always
bet
pay.
I bet you illegally streamed Jake Paul the other night.
Nah, I didn't. I just watched the highlights. All right, man. I'll holler at you. Astros the next 3 days. Then we got an off day, and we got a little bit of
A
Eagles.
football
action.
game. A football game. Yay.
Yeah, Eagles. There we go. Another loss.
Yay.
Yes.
Yeah, we get to watch
First pick in
Jordan
the draft.
Davis.
Come on, Lions. Win a game for once.
That ain't happening anytime soon. Their coach is a bigger disaster than Lovie is.
All right, man. I'll holler at you.
Adios.
All right, there you go. Cody Stutes. In the loop tomorrow, 10 a.m. We'll look ahead to game 3, game 4, game 5 for the Astros. Little reaction Monday. Brandin Cooks trade deadline is on Tuesday. We'll keep an eye on that. And we'll also do some videos, keep it going. If you haven't subscribed, please do spread the word. Appreciate you all. Thank you very much for riding with us. Some say, I got to put up with 10 more games of this. I get it, but there's nothing I would rather, there's nothing that I would rather be doing than that. We're all in this together. Until next time, I'll holler at y'all. At Landry Locker on Twitter, at Landry